I'm probably going to choose something really clickbaitish for the title of this, and I do that without shame. I was going to say shamelessly, but I really mean without shame, because I think it's okay to use clickbait if the material is solid, if the material is something that that people really do need to see, then it's there's nothing wrong with tricking them, if you will, into watching it. And of course, you'll be the judge of that as you watch this video. But I had a very curious experience last night as I was watching this movie on Netflix. This sort of kind of generally nondescript movie in some ways from a few years back. It was, for whatever reason, I'm kind of going through a horror phase. I'm looking at lots of horror movies, and I have a curious relationship with the genre of horror. As a kid, I shunned it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I saw it as somehow like it represented that which was which I wanted I wanted to be going in a different direction from what I understood horror as being. And this is like from an early age, like 10, 11, 12. I was actively shunning horror movies and and other things at the same. And this was when Stephen King books were at their peak, and Stephen King movies. The whole Stephen King cult was maybe at its zenith during this time, the early to mid '80s. But I stayed away from all of that because I understood that what I wanted to pursue, if you will, were happier vibes. I didn't put it that way. I didn't really put it in any way. I didn't really articulate it to myself. But the reason why I preferred movies that had and books that were about adventure, and as opposed to horror, as opposed to something really, some unearthly evil threatens everyone. That was that I understood in a way that one seemed to be life giving, and the other seemed to be, in a way, life inhibiting, or like why watch things that are just going to scare you and give you nightmares and make you feel despair, right? What is really in that for you, the viewer? Apparently, for a lot of my peers, who gobbled up that kind of stuff, who loved all the slasher flicks that were big in the '80s, and who loved Stephen King novels and Stephen King movies, most of which were pretty crap at around that time. I think the first good Stephen King adaptation movie was maybe Misery. That was like late '80s, early '90s. But it was all pretty much just schlock before that. Oh yeah, there was also Stand By Me, but that's sort of a different thing. And the Bachman series, including The Running Man, which wasn't horror at all. It was sci-fi. But for a lot of my friends, or they weren't really my friends, they were just my peers. They were people that I knew. There were other kids at my school, or slightly older kids, or adults that I that I knew, or I was aware of, or whatever. They seem to eat that stuff up. They seem to really like that stuff. And I was always just thinking, well, these slasher movies, is just about somebody who goes around killing a bunch of people, and then nothing really happens. There's no justice. The slasher gets away with it, or you think he's dead, but then he's really alive. And then there's the next movie where he kills a bunch more people, and you think he's dead, but he's still alive. And I was just sort of like, no, I don't want to see. I want to see evil conquered. I want to see good triumph over evil. That was how my mind was working at the time, and that was why I didn't want to partake in those particular bits of entertainment, those venues of entertainment that were considered horror. As I grew older, I came to have a different sort of take on horror, and I eventually came to see that horror isn't just about like watching evil triumph over good or anything like that, but it's about facing the things that are the things that we can't control in life, the terrors that are out there that we have little power over to change one way or the other, and that there can be something compelling and even at times uplifting about seeing a story like that, where there is an emphasis on horror, and maybe a lot of terrible things happen in it, and maybe it's even really violent and gory and stuff. But still, through it all, you kind of have this this through line. I hate to use that term; it's one of those annoying, drama student terms. And I was in a lot of drama when I was younger, so I heard that term a lot. What's your through line as a character? But the through line being that you found your way through the horror to the light, and so there, like I said, there's something ultimately not. It's not just about despair. It's not just about hopelessness. It's not just about you bash away at the same evil over and over and over again, trying to kill it, but it never dies, and it comes back again and kills more people and kills more people and kills more people. There is. It does seem to me a type of horror that is exactly like that, and I remember, like in the early '90s, there were those movies, that series of movies called Final Destination. This is right around the same time as Scream. I guess it was I guess it wasn't the early. I guess it was more like the mid to late '90s. It was sort of adjacent to the Scream franchise, and in those movies, it was like, I remember seeing the first one, and it's just like, why are people enjoying this? It's just all about this impersonal force that decides that if you're going to die, death is going to come and get you, and if you escape death, you weren't supposed to escape it. So now we're going to see all these characters who escaped death because they got off the plane that was going to blow up or whatever. Now we're going to see all this contrived stuff happen to them where they end up dying in these weird, convoluted, awful accidents, one by one. And it's just like, what's the point of all this? Why are people enjoying this? And I think a lot of people just enjoy that stuff just in a brainless kind of way. Like, whoa, that must have hurt. That kind of mentality. But I remember thinking about those movies, like this is nihilistic. This is just about not being able to escape death. When death comes for you, it's going to keep coming and coming and coming. And if you get away from it, you weren't supposed to get away from it, and it's going to get you anyway. But there's nothing in it about like God. There's nothing in it about ultimate questions of justice and and so forth. It's just death is going to get you. And I didn't watch any other of those movies but the very first one. I think because they just didn't. It just didn't. I remember when I was a kid seeing the previews for The Shining, or seeing scenes from The Shining, just being aware of I said that there was no good Stephen King movie. I was wrong. The Shining, of course, was really early on, 1980. So that's the exception to the rule. Where the movie was probably better than the book. I don't know. I haven't read the book. But I remember, like, as a kid, just being like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to." You couldn't pay me enough to see that movie, because from everything that I saw about it, it just resonated. It was way too familiar. There was too much familiarity for me. The kid in it looked like me. He had my hair. He reminded me of myself. He had my hair. I wore the same. My mom dressed me in those same kind of clothes that kid's mom dressed him in. In the early '80s. The corduroy pants and the colorful sweaters and all that kind of stuff. And he had my hair. The mop of curly hair or of wavy hair, and I was an only child, so I was, it was just me and my mom and my dad. And my dad was a college professor, kind of an intellectual, like, I guess kind of like, Jack Torrance in the movie, Jack Nicholson's character in the movie. And the most horrifying thing to me was the idea of just, my dad losing his mind and deciding to kill my mom and me. It was like, it was too personal. And again, I could just tell it was something I didn't want to watch. Now, years and years later, I came back to it, and watched it. And now, of course, I appreciate it for the classic that it is. And there's more going on than just, what I was seeing at age 10 or 11, when I saw scenes from that movie. But again, at the time, definitely something I wanted to keep at a distance from myself. I think at some point I came to see that horror itself can be a kind of adventure. That horror and adventure are not necessarily antithetical. And there were horror, like we've talked about with Indiana Jones. There were horror elements in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the exploding heads scene, all of the darker aspects of Temple of Doom. The guy drinking from the wrong Grail cup and then shriveling and dying in front of our eyes. In Last Crusade, there were definitely horror elements to, and all the swarming, whether they're rats or bug or gross looking bugs or snakes slithering all around each other, just a whole room full of snakes. All that was pretty pretty horrifying, but it was again, you had this push through with the main character, going for trying to help good prevail over evil in whatever way it was set up in these various movies. And so I gradually came to see that horror and again adventure could be linked. That horror didn't just mean evil wins, and a bunch of innocent people die horribly. As I grew into a literature-oriented person and eventually, even a literature teacher, but more importantly, a literature enthusiast and a writer myself, I came to see that works like Dante and his Divine Comedy, even though it was written centuries ago, and there are lots of things about it that make it harder for us as a modern audience to understand, there is something that comes through in that, and part of what comes through is this sense of real horror, especially in the first and most famous of the three sections of that long epic poem, being the Inferno, the part about him journeying through hell with his guide Virgil, and all the things that they saw in hell and all the ways in which the sinners were being punished. And it was definitely horrific, but then hell has to be horrific or it's not hell. It doesn't succeed. It doesn't succeed in communicating hellishness if it's not hellacious. That's just kind of reflexive, isn't it? So and yet that poem talks about this epic journey that the narrator makes, where he literally travels through hell and then up to first to purgatory and then finally to paradiso, or heaven. So that again, helps you to take a horror and put it in its proper sort of perspective. Now, what I'm finding is that I had intended to just start to talk about the movie that I saw the other night, but I found myself instead going into this preamble, because I think this preamble, which has been this whole video, this preamble is important to understanding this, my reaction to this movie. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video now, and then in my next video, I'm going to talk about the movie itself and my experience with it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Leave your comments below.